World. Don't forget to log on www.Rainier Avenue
1212
World.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
1, 2, get down.
What's up, big and little homies? This is Masvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Petro, King County. This is where you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
See a bad
PrEP is a daily pill that can significantly reduce your chances of getting HIV, and typically it takes a trip to a physician to get it. Now you can visit select pharmacies, get tested on the spot, and walk away with your first month of PrEP. It's easier than ever to protect yourself from HIV, and with all the coverage options, you can get it at a very low cost. To find your nearest participating pharmacy, go to doh.wa.gov/PrEP now. That's doh.wa.gov/PrEP. Do it now. This is a message from the Washington State Department of Health and Public Health, Seattle and King County.
Oh, my man. You know, everybody goes through a storm sometimes.
God is, and Rainier Avenue Radio.world have a new address. We're now located at 4916 Rainier Avenue South in Columbia City, 98118. God is still loving on your community, being a blessing and meeting the needs of the people. Don't miss any of our amazing shows. Your favorite community radio station. Tune in and come on down and get some free food and let us continue to love on you. Don't forget to tune in. See you soon for free food and free entertainment with God Is and Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Hey, this is Paul Pearson. I've hosted the R&B show Star Time since the very beginning of Rainier Avenue Radio, and after years of featuring tracks from the 50s through the 80s, Star Time now plays R&B and hip-hop from the 1990s as well. A whole half-century of soul, funk, hip-hop, and more on Star Time, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Greetings. This is your host, DJ Neftali, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, the best DJ in the Seattle area. You can catch me every Monday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Like I said, this is DJ Neftali, the best reggae in Seattle, Washington, the best radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Come on. Right?
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio,
Your community radio station.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio .world and our community election connection. We're doing this again. It never becomes unimportant to cover an election. So if you're thinking that, well, this isn't the presidential election, these elections right here, this electoral season impacts your community probably even more than the presidential election. The officials that are running for the candidates that are running for office today, well, they're going to impact your community. My name's Tony B, and you are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. We're so excited to be able to do this for you again and help you become more informed voters. We're excited about the candidates that we have here today. This particular debate will be for King County Prosecutor. The candidates today are Jim Ferrell and also Leesa Manion. You'll have an opportunity to hear opening statements from both of them. I want to tell you a little bit about, I'm just going to read what it says here actually in the mission statement for this position. The criminal division represents the state and county in criminal matters in the King County District and Superior Courts, the state and federal courts of appeal in Washington and U.S. Supreme Courts. Civil Division is the county's law firms. It serves as legal counsel to the Metropolitan King County Council, the county executive, and all its agencies, Superior Court, district courts, the county assessor, independent boards, commissions, and some school districts. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, who gets this position will decide when cases are heard, will prosecute cases, will defend cases. This is an important position for our community. I'll tell you a little bit about the rules of this particular debate and how this is going to work as well. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes, and they'll get a 2-minute opening statement, a 2-minute closing statement. Each candidate will be allowed two minutes to respond to the moderators. The moderators will then have the opportunity to say if they'd like a rebuttal. That will be 30 seconds. Don't worry, I'm going to be up here refereeing the whole thing. Time permitting, each candidate will be able to ask your opponent a question, and you will have 1 minute to answer and respond to that question. You each have that opportunity. You don't have to take it. You could decline the opportunity as well. A little bit more about Rainier Avenue Radio. We have a listener base of over 50,000. Seattle's a target market. 54% of our listeners use mobile devices, 43% laptops. Because we're a digital format, we're able to identify our listener base with a fairly amount of certainty. We have certainly experienced a spike in our listenership for this particular debate, and we thank our candidates for taking the time to be here. One thing I have to do is figure out who's going to go first, and so I don't know if I have a coin. Does anybody have a quarter out there, or some change? You know, I have no shame, so that I can do a coin flip, and we'll decide who goes first. I am going to introduce you to your moderators, but I'm going to do this. So this coin flip will decide. You will have the opportunity, I guess, in the football terms, to either defer or go first. All right. So since I'm here closest to you, I'm going to put the mic down and I'm going to ask you to call heads or tails. All right. Yeah. It is tails. So you will have the opportunity to start with your opening statement, or you can choose to defer, and Leesa will start, and then you can also go last on your closing statement. So would you like to go first, or would you like to defer?
I'll go first.
You want to go first?
Sure. You bet.
Okay. All right, well, I'll pick the microphone back up here. So candidate Ferrell will go first. Right now, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce you to community members who have taken their time to come be moderators for this discussion. Again, this is a critical discussion to our community and for our community. And so I'm going to try and hopefully we'll not have a whole bunch of $25 words. That's going to be up to the candidates. But I'd like you to speak directly to the issues that concern our community members. And moderators, I will remind you to keep your questions brief. That way we can have more questions. You certainly can add context to your question, but just remember to keep your questions brief because we really want to make sure that we hear from our candidates. And so I will start with Pastor Jeffrey. from New Hope Baptist Church. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds if you'd like to say anything that you would like to our audience. First of all, thank you for being here. Thanks for everything that you've done in our communities and that you continue to do in our communities. Is there anything that you would like to say to our audience right now?
I just look forward to an honest and forthright discussion on many of the important issues that face, especially disadvantaged people and the Seattle community. So I'm excited to be here.
All right. And also, Cindy, I had a wonderful bio for you. A longtime activist in our community organizer, involved in so many different areas and supports of our community. Cindy, thank you so much for being here. And the same, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. And then at that point, we're going to get ready to start. Is there anything that you'd like to say in regards to the debate going on here, your feelings about community, the electoral season, whatever you want?
Sure. So I've been working in this political scene for since 1986 professionally. I congratulate everybody who gets into the fray. It is hard work running for office, and it's hard work being in office. The number of critics never ends. So I commend you both. I wish you well. I thank the audience who've come and to the people listening. Always remember to be kinder to these people. They put their families on hold while they do this job.
Okay. And KL, are we ready with the clock?
Yeah.
So you will each have 2 minutes. Candidate Ferrell, you'll get the first question, and you'll also have the opportunity to do your opening statement first. Okay. And so we're going to get ready to begin here. You ready, KL? Yeah. Okay. 2 minutes. Candidate Ferrell, countdown, your opening statement.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for hosting us here and for being on the on the radio here. My name is Jim Ferrell. Currently, I'm the mayor of Federal Way. Before that, I was actually a King County Prosecutor for 16 years. Before that, I was a city prosecutor for 3 years, for a total of 19 years that I served as a prosecutor. Now I'm in my 3rd term as mayor of Federal Way. Do we have some feedback, you guys? I'm in my 3rd term as mayor. I've been mayor for 9 years. I lead a city of 100,000 people, a budget of over $100 million, and a workforce of 600. And really, it is a tremendous challenge and an honor. But I have to tell you that, as mayor of Federal Way, I've been very concerned, as are many mayors and leaders in South King County and throughout King County, about the rise in crime, be it violent crime or property crime. I was leading a coalition of mayors to really address many of these issues. And we've had many dialogues with the King County Prosecutor's Office. But it was really attempting to work in partnership to make King County safer. I'm running for this office because I believe, with my unique perspective, both as a mayor of a pretty large city of over 100,000 people, but also 19 years as a prosecutor, where I was a senior deputy. I tried hundreds of cases. I handled thousands of them. So I've really got this tremendous background and experience. And you're really, ultimately, from all my experience, I think that the role of prosecutor isn't just to find justice for the victim and the community, but also to help all the individuals, especially the defendant, to make sure that we don't see them back in court and that they can live productive lives. And so I'm excited about this race. I've got a tremendous amount of support. Just this past week, I earned the endorsement of the Seattle Times editorial board, and Congressman Adam Smith has endorsed my campaign, the 47th District Democrats, hundreds of individuals, business, labor, a tremendous amount of labor support. I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I will say, at 10 seconds, I will let you know when your time is up. I didn't want to interrupt you and stop you that time, but just so that you know, when you're responding and you have 10 seconds left, you'll just hear me say 10 seconds. Candidate Manion, you have 2 minutes, and your opening statement, please.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Leesa Manion. I know a lot of our audience members, and I suspect I've met a lot of our listeners, either in community or an urban league or a Choose 180 event. As many of you know, I have dedicated 27 years of my career to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And for the past 15 years, I have served as the Chief of Staff. And in this role, I have partnered with community to build proven and effective diversion programs to keep our young people out of the criminal justice system. And I've also worked to reduce racial disparities in our criminal legal system. The residents and the voters and the communities of King County deserve a prosecutor who share their values. A prosecutor is 100% committed to ensuring that all of our communities are safe and supported. A prosecutor who won't criminalize the poor or unjustly incarcerate our communities of color. A prosecutor who knows how to identify common ground and build strong and collaborative and inclusive coalitions that work together to get results. A prosecutor who protects public safety by addressing both incidents of crime and tackling root causes. A prosecutor who works to end recidivism. A prosecutor who isn't afraid to call out the inequities of our current criminal legal system and who instead is actively working to build a fair and transparent justice system that protects public safety, promotes racial equity, and provides hope and opportunity for all parts of King County. I am that prosecutor. And with your help, I will be the first woman and the first person of color to hold this seat. And I will bring 27 years of proven leadership and a different perspective and lived experience to this office. And with your help, I will continue to build strong partnerships, and I will invite the participation of our Black and BIPOC communities. I want you at the table crafting justice with me. I am the right person to be our next King County prosecuting attorney, and I would be honored to have your vote.
All right, here we go. I will tell you something. A lot of you out there may not have made up your mind, and this will be replayed. So after it airs live, you'll be able to share this with friends, family, and folks can make a decision about this very important position that is an elected official. So we're going to get ready to get started. Cindy, we're going to start with you. You will ask the first question. The question will be asked of both candidates. To start off with, you'll be asking the question initially to candidate Ferrell. After the question, if you would like a rebuttal, you can say you would like an opportunity to rebut or hear more. You get 30 seconds. You'll have 30 seconds to respond to that. Again, if this is confusing, I will explain it to you as we go through the process. So here is our first question, Cindy, and this is a question initially will be for candidate Ferrell. Let's go.
In spite of your efforts to reduce gun violence, shootings are happening at a greater frequency in King County and especially in your area. What can you do differently to solve this violence?
2 minutes.
You bet. It is really a really serious problem in regard to violence and especially gun violence. Number one, the individuals that we that are caught using firearms, especially in the commission of a crime, need to be held fully accountable. Whether that's adding a firearm allegation, a special allegation, making sure that individuals are fully prosecuted and held accountable for those crimes. That's number one. Number two, I think you've really got to figure out, many crimes that are used with guns are used with stolen guns that have not been adequately secured. So you've got to have programs in place to make sure not only for the safety of the children in the homes, but also the individuals that come into possession of these firearms. But I think also there's quite a number of very serious high impact offenders, and that we need to really identify the individuals who are doing much of this crime, hold them accountable, identify where they're at, and but it's really about getting guns off the street and holding offenders accountable.
Thank you.
You still have some time left if you'd like to take it. You have 1 minute. Are you good? Or
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Same question. Would you like that question repeated, candidate?
No, I think I remember the question.
So the question again is, in spite of your efforts to reduce gun violence, shootings are happening with greater frequency in King County. I meant to mention that the murders in Seattle alone are almost, I think we're at 76 murders right now this year, which is more than triple normal. What would you do differently to solve this violence?
2 minutes.
I have received the sole endorsement of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility because I have tackled gun violence from multiple perspectives. I have worked with lawmakers to introduce legislation and to pass legislation that keeps firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals, and we have banned high-capacity magazines in our state. I was also a key stakeholder in forming our regional domestic violence firearm enforcement unit, the first of its kind unit that enforces extreme risk protection orders, and it removes firearms from those who are committing domestic violence or other dangerous situations. I also secured funding for our crime strategies unit. We track gun violence and gunshots in all parts of King County where someone has been killed, physically harmed, or property has been damaged. And we know how to identify the individuals who are close to gun violence. And we can and we must partner with our community and with our law enforcement partners to intervene before these individuals become victims or perpetrators of crime. When we work together, we can have the impact of improving public safety and reducing gun crime. We also know that practicing safe storage is a very cost-effective way of reducing gun violence. When we store firearms away from ammunition, we have the automatic impact of improving public safety. One of the things that I worked with King County Executive Dow Constantine, who has endorsed me, when all new employees come onto King County, part of their onboarding process is we talk about safe storage, and I would do that in the prosecuting attorney's office under my leadership, and I will continue to work with the 28 state lawmakers who've endorsed me to continue to pass important gun violence prevention bills.
10 seconds.
Good.
I'm good.
Cindy, do you have a follow-up question for either of our candidates?
No, I'll pass to Robert Jeffries.
Okay. Pastor Jeffrey, next question, and your question will initially be directed to candidate Manion.
Okay, in Seattle, there is a disproportionate incarceration rate for, especially for African Americans. And how will you decrease or work to decrease this incarceration disproportionality for African Americans in the city of Seattle?
2 minutes.
Thank you. We know that there are racial disparities in our criminal legal system. And unless we think system actors are doing this intentionally, we know that there's inherent racism built into our systems. And the way that we dismantle racial disparities is we have to be intentional. We have to study and share the data. And we also have to understand how race intersects with the criminal legal system. So here are some things that I have done to work to dismantle the racism in our criminal justice system. I implemented mandatory implicit bias training for all prosecuting attorney employees to improve the fair and impartial decision making. I also implemented mandatory cultural competency training for all employees to better understand race and how it intersects with our criminal legal system. Also, under my leadership, we were the first prosecutor's office in the state to put a public-facing data dashboard on our website that talks about the racial makeup of both referrals and our charged cases. And we still have important work to do. We can apply a race equity tool to our work. We can engage in the practice of blind decision-making. And in order to do that, we have to invite the participation of our Black, Brown, BIPOC communities to the table. One, because we can learn from your lived experiences. 2, we need your leadership and your good ideas. 3, we need your experience in engaging in this type of work. The prosecuting attorney's office is relatively new to it. And also by inviting participation from our community, we will earn trust. That's the stuff that I have done. The other thing that I have done is I've worked really hard to keep young people out of our court system. We know that young people are disproportionately impacted, particularly our Black and Brown youth, and building Choose 180, being a co-founding partner, has really worked to save the young people from our system.
And Pastor Jeffrey, same question. Candidate Ferrell, would you like the question repeated?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay. I will make KO. Ready? 2 minutes.
All right. I mean, we all know that disproportionality exists, and I think it's really important to have that intentionality to make sure that we address it head on. I do think that trainings on implicit bias are absolutely important to make sure that our officers that respond out to the scene are doing so in a manner that's consistent with community expectations and fairness. And I think those kinds of trainings, and I think there was involved in the question was that people may not even realize that they're obviously, and that's what implicit bias really is about, is that these predispositioned ideas. And so we've got to make sure that we have officers out there that are doing their absolute level best to not focus in on individuals unfairly. The other thing is I do believe, and one of the things that we did in the city of Federal Way, body-worn cameras are an excellent tool, and that's why we made sure just last year we instituted body-worn cameras, but also acts of misconduct by officers, where you have officers in the force that are bad actors that have done bad things. That's why the City Federal Way, I made it a policy that if any officer ended up on a Brady list, a list that is identified as individuals that have committed misconduct, they're immediately terminated. Also, I think ultimately, if you take a look at unjust convictions and where they go wrong, oftentimes where cases really go wrong and the focus becomes on an individual who is ultimately innocent, it's about the identification procedures, making sure that those are objective. That when in regard to photo montages or that kind of process, that there's double blind processes to ensure the detectives don't know when they're showing the montage to the alleged victim that they don't know. So I think there are all kinds of objective ways that we can help make the system more fair and that will be more reflective of the community desire to have fairness of the system.
10 seconds. Good?
Yep.
Pastor Jeffrey, any follow-up for either one of our candidates to your question?
No, not.
You good? Okay. Cindy, the next question will be for you, and your question will initially be directed to candidate Ferrell.
Restorative Community Pathways, a pre-filing diversion program for nonviolent youth, has received millions of dollars with little accountability or transparency. A former felon and sex offender was hired, and this was discovered and outed just in the recent weeks. King County leaders were dodging accountability on this. What would you do to change this and make this diversion program more accountable and transparent?
2 minutes.
Well, this is something that so I think we all noticed, and it's very unfortunate. I think RCP can be an incredibly important tool and program for this community, but it's missing key elements of transparency and accountability. We have got to have case numbers, a judicial component. You've got to add some transparency and accountability. We need to know, the public and the communities that are served by RCP, the cases, what is being asked of the individuals in the system, some sort of report back. Was there compliance? Did they appear? Those kinds of things in which we have that transparency. So I think actually RCP is one of the things that got me in this race, because the manner in which it was launched with zero notice to the South King County mayors and any of the mayors that I've ever talked to did not know that this is actually being rolled out for 6 weeks until after it had been done so. So it needs to have those transparency markers of a case number, a judge, a referral. Those are the kinds of, and a check back to see if compliance occurred. Once that occurs, I think the system will be a much better system. And I do think that we need to really figure out how is that money being spent. And so I think RCP needs a reset, but it's certainly important to make sure that the whole goal here is to make sure that young people who end up committing a crime can get course corrected and get their lives back on track. That's the goal.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Are you okay?
I would say this, that I don't think it would be overly burdensome or problematic to add the case number and a judicial step to make sure that there's that step. And I think actually the defense attorneys, the introduction of a defense attorney and a case number essentially will make sure that we can track and that there's the important part of transparency.
All right. Candidate Manion, would you like the question repeated?
No, I have the question.
Okay.
It's really important to clarify. I saw that KUOW story, and that was a dismay. And I'm sure that the executive and the mayor were embarrassed by their decision. But that individual was not part of Restorative Community Pathways. That individual was part of an organization called the Peacekeepers Collective. The prosecuting attorney's office has never referred a case to the Peacekeepers Collective. And it's just really important to acknowledge that that is a different program entirely. So Restorative Community Pathways is a pre-filing juvenile diversion program. And there is no case number and no judge, because when you have a case number, that's called prosecution. In our state, we have mandatory pre-file juvenile diversion for all misdemeanor crime. So Restorative Community Pathways meets our legal obligation, but it also handles some first-time, nonviolent felony matters. We have had juvenile diversion since 1978. And Restorative Community Pathways is simply our most effective, most modern, most funded diversion program. And we know that it is working because early results show that the recidivism rate is 8%. compared to 22% of traditional prosecution and incarceration at 12th and Alder. So the thing about restorative community pathways is that there are 9 nonprofits that the King County Executive has partnered with that meet individuals, the community, the family, the young person, and harmed parties in their homes, on evenings, weekends, at their schools. And with all due respect to our judges, I don't know a single judge that does that. The other thing about restorative community pathways is it does provide some out-of-pocket losses for harmed parties, whether it's an insurance deductible or to replace or
10
repair
seconds.
property. Okay, thank you. It just threw me when you said 10 seconds, so I'll just end.
Any follow-up?
Well, I think the KUOW follow-up story would debate your contention that the individual did not work for Community Pathways. I think they made it clear that he did. But regardless of that, I think my concern is very much on how does the prosecutor actually oversee more of that? It seems like it's still too dispersed. And when you're citing that the county executive is the person, that's dealing with this, and this diversion program seems like it should have more direct connection to the prosecutor's office.
We do have direct connection.
Yeah, 30 seconds, by the way.
We do have direct connection. We know the individuals who are referred to restorative community pathways. It is not a free pass. They work with the nonprofits that were contracted with the King County Executive's office. It is the King County Executive's office that funds the program. But we in the prosecuting attorney's office, we know the individuals who've been referred. We keep a 2 to 3 sentence summary of every case that is referred, and we know if individuals come back
10
to
seconds.
us. That's how we know that there's an 8% recidivism rate.
Okay, and candidate Ferrell, 30 seconds.
You bet. The troubling part of RCP is it's not all 9 violent offenses. You've got robbery second degree, residential burglary, unlawful possession of a firearm, bringing a gun to school, felony assault. And I just don't think those are appropriate for that type of program, at least the way it's structured now. And I know I have several friends who are judges and supporters of mine that are very concerned
10 seconds.
about judges being cut out of this process, as is the juvenile probation department.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B. This is our community election connection. We did this 6 years ago, and then 4 years ago, and then 2 years ago. I'm going to big up our station here for a second. We also have what's called our Student Election Connection. We did a program by 2 students who had been in our programs before, and I think over 300 students took our program and learned more about what elections were, about everything that went into the elections, and it was just phenomenal. And so, yeah, we take our elections very seriously here. The most important thing, though, is to make sure that our community is informed. So, again, Pastor Jeffrey, you have the opportunity here to ask the next question, and initially your question should be directed to candidate Manion.
Okay. I'm just concerned about the exclusion of certain crimes, because young people commit a lot of those crimes, and they're first-time offenders, and they need rehabilitation. Just because they commit a specific crime does not make them some kind of untouchable. I'm concerned about that attitude. What specific role do you think prosecutors should be participating in to ensure that reentrance is a smooth transition and not just revocations, but actually participating in services for those who have done their time and are now back in the community? I mean, what role do you think prosecutors should participate in that?
Sure. Pastor Jeffrey, I agree that some of the cases that are referred to restorative community pathways, that pre-filing juvenile diversion program, they do have scary names: robbery in the second degree. That is a young person who pushes another person and takes property with force. No serious injury, no weapons. Those cases can be most effectively handled in partnership with the community. So I agree that we should exclude violent crime. We should exclude sexual assaults. We should exclude repeat crimes. But for individuals who are entering the system for the first time, especially our young people where it's nonviolent, I think we can partner with community and effectively change behavior with diversion. With regard to reentry, I am really proud of the work that I have done to support reentry for men and women leaving our state prison system. We know that each year there are 8,000 women and men in Washington state who leave our prisons, and that a third of them will get back because they need the same things that we need. They need a place to live, they need their basic needs addressed, they need to have root causes addressed, they need to have access to services and housing and supports, and they need access to jobs. And we know that having a criminal conviction and actually having contact with the criminal justice system can often serve as a barrier to financial aid, educational opportunities, housing, and jobs. So when we together work to dismantle those, and I'm really proud of the work I've done to build a post-conviction unit that without charge to the individuals serves to vacate eligible convictions. We can work together to expand that work.
Still have 18 seconds if you'd like to use.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Would you like to hear the question?
Oh, I've got it. Thank you very much. And Pastor Jeffrey, I agree completely that it's not about the fact that the individuals that I listed that committed the crimes of robbery, residential burglary, firearm, felony, assault. It's not that there is, they're just not, those cases are not appropriate not to have a judge, a case number, without a check back, without a report back. RCP needs to be recalibrated to make sure. I think actually, if you recalibrated RCP and made sure that it had some of those transparency and accountability measures, then those would likely be appropriate. But I just don't think those are appropriate there. But the entire goal of the criminal justice system should make sure that we restore people. Then that once they are done, either with a diversion or a program like this where they can get it resolved, a dismissal or something close to it, that we need to make sure that we prepare people for success. And that means making sure that they can move forward productively. Hope is the most important thing in burning in each one of us, and especially with young people. You want to make sure you don't extinguish that hope so early by overly punitive and structural processes, that it burns out that hope. And we want to make sure that people can go get education and a job and a family and be productive members. Everybody in this room and everybody has made a mistake. We want to make sure that people can meaningfully course correct. My concern is that if somebody, especially a young person, doesn't learn meaningfully from a mistake, we really run the risk of having them repeat. And we don't want that, because once they've done that several times, then they're on a much different pathway. And that's really where I'm coming from.
I think if they've been in prison, they've learned something. I agree that violent crimes should be distinguished over nonviolent crimes and crimes that people are pushed into. I think that on the individual level, rather than categorizing people in terms of the crime itself, but if they're violent criminals, if they've done violence, then that's a different story. And, and of course, sexual assault and those things are different stories. But I just have a problem with just a blanket kind of thing that you described, and I pretty much agree with.
I want to make sure that Candidate Manion, did you want
with what Leesa said,
respond to?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I agree. Like we know that coming into contact with the criminal justice system harms individuals, and that they're much more likely to come back a second time. And I agree that we should not be overly punitive, especially with young people. And I trust our community to work with our young people. And I think that when we partner with the community, we get better outcomes. And when we give young people a case number and a public defender, that is called prosecution. It is not diversion.
I agree.
Well, I just respectfully disagree. If you're in somebody else's living room, if you showed up to school with a gun, if you have robbed somebody or engaged in a felony assault, you need a case number. There need to be consequences. You need to be in front of a judge. That you need to have an opportunity to be told this is not appropriate, and you have clearly gone astray. If you're somebody in somebody else's living room in a residential burglary, you've taken a wrong turn, and you need to know it. And that is not appropriate. It's not normal. And we need to make sure it doesn't keep happening.
Yeah, we agree it's a wrong turn, but how do you correct it?
Unfortunately, I got to keep going here. And Cindy, you have the next question here. 2 minutes. And your question should initially be directed to candidate Ferrell.
I'll preface this by saying that I have had my house where I live now. I've been living for 18 years. My house has been robbed 7 times in 5 years. I've had previously my car stolen 3 times. My former husband was murdered, and the person that murdered him had 5 armed robbery convictions. So I approach some of these questions from a person who has been on the other side of having these robberies. Every one of these robberies was committed by a minor. Nothing ever happened to them. Nothing ever happened to them, ever. So much attention is paid to rehabilitating the offenders. What are you going to do to address the pain and the loss of the victims of these crimes?
Candidate Ferrell, 2 minutes.
Yes, I do think, and a major part of my campaign has been about recalibrating and making sure that victims are, really a central part of what you do in the justice system, because it is the justice system. People that are victimized by crime should feel, the community should feel that if there is a crime that's committed, that there is consequence to that, and that there's justice for the victim. And justice is multiple-fold, but it's layered. But not only is there justice that's due to the accused, it's due to the accuser, and somebody who's been a victim, who's lost a loved one, who's been raped and assaulted, and whatever that is. And so I think and when people feel like there is no justice, it erodes at the trust of our community, and it breaks down the social fabric. So I don't think that people can meaningfully move forward in their lives, the offenders, if they haven't actually paid for the crime that they committed. And I think ultimately it's really about finding that balance. But people need to know that, in fact, one of the themes of my campaign is I believe in second chances, but not revolving doors where the people commit the same crimes over and over. And I think we would all agree to that. And that's really, there has been really a paradigm shift about perhaps such a focus on making sure that we correct prior injustices that we've lost some focus with regard to getting justice for victims.
You still have 40 seconds.
Thank you.
Good. Candidate Manion, would you like the question repeated?
Yes. No, I don't need it repeated. I am so sorry that you have suffered those crimes. I absolutely stand up for victims. It's super important to me. And under my leadership, I have enhanced victim services by adding 10 new victim advocates, 2 of which are bilingual, to ensure that a greater number of victims receive services and receive culturally responsive services. I also created a director of victim services position to ensure that we modernize how we offer victim services, to increase capacity, and to also think about how all of our systems and all of our decisions have a victim-centered approach. I have been endorsed by victims of crime. I am good friends with a woman who survived a very serious, prolonged attack where her fiance was also killed. And I wouldn't be able to look her in the eye if I didn't stand up for victims. I understand that's a really important part of the prosecutor's office and also of our criminal justice system. And with regard to the burglaries, it's not okay for people to invade our home. It is not. And the fact that that these young people have committed crimes and had previous criminal history shows that they probably were prosecuted. And that doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that they won't do it again. I absolutely believe in prosecuting individuals who come back into our system. Restorative community pathways, because we have talked a lot about that, is about individuals who are entering our system for the first time. And in restorative community pathways, we did have 2 cases where individuals broke into unoccupied homes. It was not okay. They took property. The police recovered all of the property, and we consulted
10
the
seconds.
homeowners to ensure that these individuals could be referred to restorative community pathways, because it's important for us to involve our victims in our decision making.
Cindy, any follow-up?
I think the biggest follow-up I have is that in much of the county, and certainly here in the city of Seattle, when you call the police to report a burglary, you don't ever see a cop. Nobody ever takes a report. You're just merely told to give you a claim number you file online that you can file with your insurance company. And then you are, excuse the expression, shit out of luck. So these kids aren't seeing anybody. And I think that's the biggest concern that I have. They're not entering the system because there's nobody to prosecute, or there's nobody taking the case in the first place. That starts on the street, which I would hope that the prosecutors wouldn't be so backlogged with thousands and thousands of cases that the cops won't even come out and refer a case to you.
Candidate Ferrell, 30 seconds.
Well, I think there's a tremendous erosion of public trust in regard to this lack of response, and it's multiple fold. The backlog that you mentioned, actually, there's 4,500 cases that are in a felony case backlog that absolutely have to get resolved. But people need to know when they call the police that not only are they going to show up, that something's going to happen ultimately, and it really is there's a great deal of frustration out throughout King County about how the King County Prosecutor
10 seconds.
has responded.
Candidate Manion.
Yes. We absolutely need more police resources, and I will stand before every city government and advocate for additional police resources, because when we call 911, when we are afraid, we want a response. We also know that police need help. We need social workers and mental health professionals to work alongside of our police, because we ask a lot of them. And we also want our police to be able to de-escalate volatile situations. And with regard to the case backlog,
10 seconds.
I do want to address the case backlog, so maybe I can do that in another question. It's really important because my opponent is not sharing all of the information, and he's not sharing all of the accurate information. So I'll bookmark that.
The good thing about this debate is that after this break, you'll be able to ask a question directly to your opponent here. We have one more question before we go to break. Pastor Jeffrey, that will be you. Please direct your question initially to Candidate Manion.
Well, I kind of feel strange answering this question now with having heard what I heard about the violence. And basically, I'm very, I'm against the violence that's going on in the city. I mean, I have family and I have parishioners, and I want a safe city. But, I need to ask this question about bail reform, because I think that we need some form of bail reform. And I would like to know from the candidates, are you for or against bail reform? And if so, what kind of reform will ensure community safety? But I definitely think that we need bail reform, because right now the bail system is not an appropriate way, I think, to deal fairly with people who find themselves in a position of being arrested or being accused. And so what are your opinions about bail reform? And again, I say, I don't ask this not being sensitive to the fact that, of people's experience with violence, but I'm also sensitive to people's experience with languishing in jail and then being found innocent and having spent all that time because they simply couldn't come up with bail.
Candidate Manion, 2 minutes.
I also want a safe city, and individuals who commit violent crimes, sexual assault, gun crimes, repeat property offenses should be held. Now, the challenge around cash bail is that we know that it disproportionately impacts people of color and poor people. And cash bail was designed originally to ensure someone's return to court. We also know from research that there are safe alternatives that protect public safety and address root causes that can ensure someone's return to court and protect public safety. And those are things like group housing, electronic home detention, text reminders, treatment. And in order to build those types of robust alternatives at the local level, I would work with the 17 retired judges who've endorsed me to ensure that those alternatives are up and running, well-funded, designed to be fair, designed to protect public safety, and that they're adequately funded and staffed to ensure that our community is safe, but also to ensure that those decisions and that the alternatives are fair to our community members.
You still have 50 seconds left if you'd like.
50 seconds?
50.
Okay, can I talk about the backlog in my 50 seconds?
You have 50 seconds.
All right, great. So I do want to talk about the fact that there is 4,500 charged felony cases. The reason that number is so high is because our prosecutors were in the courthouse every day of the pandemic filing violent crime, repeat property crimes, sexual assaults. At the same time, the Washington State Supreme Court issued an emergency order that closed courts during COVID that effectively halted our system's ability to resolve cases. So those cases, I have secured $14 million. I've hired 125 additional individuals, and we are working through that backlog, and we will get back to pre-pandemic levels within less than a 2-year period of time.
10 seconds.
I'm done.
All right. Candidate Ferrell, would you like the question repeated?
I've got it.
Okay.
I've got it. Thank you.
2 minutes.
You know, there's only, in the court rules, and of course, actually, between the two candidates, I'm the only candidate that's ever tried a case, that's ever had a caseload. I spent 19 years as a prosecutor, 16 of which in King County, hundreds of jury trials. I stood in front of the court and made probably hundreds, if not over 1,000 bail requests. There is a presumption in the court rules for release. That presumption is overcome based on 3 factors. Is there a danger to the community for a violent offense? Is there a flight risk? Is there a threat with the interference with the administration of justice? Meaning, if this person gets out, are they going to go out and harm or kill a witness? When somebody commits a felony in our community, like a sexual assault, a homicide, a robbery with a firearm, bail is critical. Bail protects the public. And I spent probably half of my 16 years in the King County Prosecutor's Office handling domestic violence cases. And when you handle a domestic violence case, your whole goal is homicide prevention. And actually, many times, the homicide has occurred. So bail is calculated to protect the public, and if they're going to reappear for court, if even danger is not an issue. I have looked at some court services in which individuals have 50, 60, 75 prior warrants. And if somebody has that many warrants, what guarantee do we have that they're going to actually show up to court? So I'm not an advocate of bail reform. I think I think the court rules are spot on. I think they are calculated to protect the public, to make sure. In the city of Federal Way, we had 2 youths who committed an armed robbery in Federal Way. They got an ankle bracelet. They got out with that ankle bracelet and they committed a murder, or suspected of committing a murder down in Pierce County. That's why there's bail.
Okay, I think that
I
agree.
Hold on 1 second. You have 10 seconds left.
I said it.
Okay.
I think I
you
agree.
have time here for a brief follow-up.
I think I agree that in some instances bail is necessary. But I think that when you live in a society where if you have money, no matter what you do, you can get out on bail, pretty much. I mean, because you have money. That doesn't reduce the risk to the community. You're getting out because you have money. And I'm saying that—
I'm gonna have to make it a question. It'll be a brief question.
Are there alternative ways for bail than what we are presently experiencing? Because right now, the rich get away. The poor languish in jail, innocent or not. And of course, you have to be presumed innocent.
Okay. Candidate Manion, would you like to respond to the follow-up question?
You know, I will say that we can do both. We can hold the individuals who are violent, who are committing sexual assaults, who are committing repeat gun crimes, and our prosecutors make appropriate bail requests in those cases. I also want to build a world where we have effective alternatives that protect public safety, but also allow people to have their root causes addressed. We can have group housing. We can have text reminders, and we can seek appropriate alternatities, but we have to have them and we have to build them.
And that's time. Candidate Ferrell, you have 30 seconds.
Just real briefly, Pastor, I agree that there are many cases in which the bail and pretrial custody is not necessary, and electronic home detention is appropriate on occasion if depending on the charged offense. A lot of it depends on the charged offense and the degree of violence alleged and the prior history.
10 seconds.
Day reporting is also something that I think the court has routinely taken a look at to restrict that. I think you would be really proud of the King County Superior
and time
on how those are calculated.
Wow. Okay, we're going to go to a break here. I'd like to welcome everyone to Rainier Avenue Radio's Community Election Connection. This particular debate for King County Prosecuting Attorney. Couple of messages here from Rainier Avenue Radio that I want to share for everybody before we go to break. On Thursday, the iconic Ohio Players are going to be right here in the Columbia City Theater. They'll be performing this weekend at Demetrius Jazz Alley, but they're going to come here first and do an interview at 4 o'clock. So just want to let everybody know about that. The community is welcome. They're excited about coming here to be on the very same stage that Jimi Hendrix performed on, that Nirvana performed on, that is now Black owned in the Columbia City Theater. And then on Saturday, I know the Mariners are going to be playing. Yeah, they'll still be playing. We'll be broadcasting the Rainier Beach Garfield football game at 2 o'clock on Saturday. So just a couple of tidbits from Rainier Avenue Radio. On the 27th, we'll be doing the debate for the 37th Legislative District Representative as well right here. When we come back, both of our candidates will have an opportunity to ask questions of each other. And then I'm also going to see if we can take a question or two from the audience. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world, our community election connection. It's me, your host, Tony B, and we will be back right after this. Rainier Avenue Radio. PrEP is a daily pill that can significantly reduce your chances of getting HIV, and typically it takes a trip to a physician to get it. Now you can visit select pharmacies, get tested on the spot, and walk away with your first month of PrEP. It's easier than ever to protect yourself from HIV, and with all the coverage options, you can get it at a very low cost. To find your nearest participating pharmacy, go to doh.wa.gov/PrEP now. That's doh.wa.gov/PrEP. Do it now. This is a message from the Washington State Department of Health and Public Health, Seattle and King County.
What's on your heart? Are you exhausted at the lack of progress for people of color in business, politics, and life? This is Cindy Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio. Each week, we explore this heart condition in the country that is affecting you and me. We have real conversations about what's necessary for change. It's time to change this dialogue. Will you join this Heartbeat weekly, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio?
Are you feeling the Seattle squeeze? The Seattle Department of Transportation has an app for that. Dot Maps will let you find where construction is taking place now and in the months ahead, and you can even set up email notifications. Find more info on SDOT's blog or access Dot Maps at streetwork.seattle.gov/map.
This is Brenda Charles Edwards, host of Seniors Matter. Join me every week to get information on activities and issues that impact the lives of older adults and their families. That's Seniors Matter every week on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Do you want to reach out to the Vietnamese community in Seattle? Just advertise in Người Việt Tây Bắc, that is Northwest Vietnamese News, the longest running Vietnamese language newspaper in our region. Go to nvnorthwest.com.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Ave Radio.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. This is our community election connection. And thank you all for listening. Thank you all who are watching. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Twitch and you have to get in your car, you can also listen to us by going to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. If you're listening, check us out on one of the video platforms that we're offering. And very shortly, we're going to be able to do this on our own server as well. So we appreciate all the support that we have gotten. And if anyone would like to donate, it'll probably be on the screen, but you can donate to us at Venmo at Rainier Avenue Radio. Right now, this is part of the debate where each candidate has an opportunity to ask a question of the other candidate. And Candidate Ferrell, you were okay with going first. And so you will have the opportunity to ask a question of Candidate Manion. Candidate Manion, you will have 1 minute to respond. And then you will have an opportunity to ask a question of Candidate Ferrell. There will be no rebuttal, so get it in.
Okay.
All right. Candidate Ferrell, your question.
All right, thank you. Hello, Leesa. You've been a chief of staff for 15 years, and you've said at several of the forums that there has been, over the past several years, a real lack of a sense of urgency, but yet you've been chief of staff. Why has there been, for the past several years, a lack of urgency at the King County Prosecutor's Office?
1 minute.
Great. I have accomplished a lot as the number 2 in the office. As the chief of staff, I have delivered for public safety. I secured $2.3 million to prosecute sexually violent predators. I have secured resources to form a new hate crimes unit. I have worked with business leaders and city attorneys to reduce organized retail theft and property crime. And there has been a lack of urgency during the pandemic. I have never seen a lack of urgency for several years. As the number 2, I have done a lot, but when I am the elected, I am a different leader than Dan Satterberg, and I will use my voice and the power of the office to speak out on really important issues. I will say that drug dealing in our community is not okay. It is not welcome, and it will not be condoned. I will also say that there is racial disparity in our criminal justice system, and it is not okay, and we must actively work to dismantle it. I am a different leader than Dan Satterberg, and I will lead with a sense of urgency that he doesn't have.
And time. Candidate Manion, would you like to take the opportunity to ask Candidate Ferrell a question?
Sure, Jim, I'm curious, how many individuals are on your personal leadership team? Not how many individuals work in the city, and how diverse is your personal leadership team?
1 minute.
That's a great question. I've got a really, well, first, my number 1 supporter is Wendy, my wife, and she is really just as I think was mentioned before, the sacrifice that families make. But I've got quite a number of friends and family, and there's there's what I call my kitchen cabinet, individuals that are probably about 5 to 10 individuals that have been lifelong friends that I've either gone to college with or that have worked with previously. And then there's a larger group that probably about 20 that I'm regularly in contact with. So I would say, quite a number of people from all walks of life, varying ages and backgrounds, and people, but that I know and trust and care about me. But ultimately, when you're making
10 seconds,
strategic decisions, it's a fairly small group of individuals, and I'm lucky to have their help and guidance.
All right. Well, that was it. That was the opportunity. Did you hear the question that you wanted to hear? Did you get the answer that you thought that you wanted to hear? We're going to go to our audience right now. Deontay, I'm going to start with you. Come on down, and you have an opportunity to ask a question. Both candidates will have 1 minute to answer. Deontay, thank you for everything that you do in our communities. And I'm going to go off script here and say that this is the place where you won the Columbia City Comedy competition 10 years ago. Yeah. That's a round of applause. I think so. So here, you have a question for our candidates.
Yes, very happy to be here. Thank y'all both for being here. I'm a representative. Today I'm representing Vocal Washington, which advocates for people living with HIV as well as people that use substances. Just recently, about a month ago, the prosecuting office decided to prosecute a young man and released his HIV status for community members to know. And it came out through Q13. And one of his statements, he stated it wasn't about his status, it was about his crime. Which is obviously, no one needs to have their status released to anybody, especially when it comes to the stigmas that happen with people living with HIV. My question is, what will you do in office to make sure people's rights are protected, especially when it comes to like HIPAA laws such as HIV, et cetera?
Candidate Ferrell, this question initially will go to you.
You bet.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. So I don't know the circumstances of that. I just need to start by saying that. I don't know exactly what the circumstances were. But I think, number one, HIPAA laws always have to be protected. And when I worked there, I think the King County Prosecutor's Office was always very good about that, and there are protections in place. So I would probably need to know more. This sounds more situationally driven, maybe related to the actual crime, but I think you're right that there's nothing more sacrosanct than the privacy of individuals.
Okay, and Candidate Manion, you have 1 minute for the same question.
Sure. I don't know the circumstances of that case, but I'm happy to look into it. If someone's HIV status is not at all related to the crime, it should not be shared. And if that happened, I would want to make sure I had a conversation with the individual who released that information. I would also ensure that we have adequate training in the office so that all of our employees know the type of information that we can share and the type of information that we shouldn't share, even if we can. That's a training issue.
Okay, we've got another question from an audience member, and this is Janet Jones Preston, and try and keep the question brief.
Yes, I've heard nothing about partnering with school systems. I'd like to hear what is your plan for youth crime prevention?
And this question initially will be directed to you, Candidate Manion.
Sure.
1 minute.
Great. One of the things I'm really proud of is working to end the enforcement of our state's truancy laws in King County Superior Court. So more than a dozen years ago, I partnered with community, I partnered with schools, and I partnered with the court. School representatives have to file petitions in order to get their funds to get engaged in school re-engagement, but I worked with the courts to get those petitions stayed so that we can offer alternatives at the school level. And I partnered with Unleash the Brilliance to bring a youth voice into that work, because we know that young people who drop out of high school are 8 times more likely to enter our prison system. So we absolutely have to engage at the school level to get at the heart of why they're not going to school, offer the opportunities and the resources they need to ensure their
10
success.
seconds. Okay, another audience question here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So just very briefly in a minute, that is an excellent question. I think it is such an important aspect. In fact, just earlier today, first thing this morning at 9 a.m., I met in the city of Federal Way with the superintendent of schools and the president of the school board, along with other leaders of local governments. And I think the King County Prosecutor's Office needs to engage in community and needs to engage, relentlessly to make sure that we've got open dialogue, that we understand the dynamics that's occurring there and help people course correct if they've made a mistake, but also just to make sure the lines of communication are open and that communication is based in respect and listening to people and trying to figure out exactly where the community is at. And that I think the schools are a great opportunity for that.
You have 15 seconds. Do you want to use it? Okay, we'll go to our next audience question. This is Mr. Tyrone Kinney. Again, try and keep the question brief.
My question is brief. You continues to say you're going to be equal in giving out time toward the young youth. And we continuously see this years and years and years and years go on. It's not equal. How can we really get it equal that white and black get the same kind of time?
Candidate Ferrell, this question's for you initially.
Well, I think it's your question, I think, really is rooted in frustration and really a feeling of betrayal with the way things have gone previously. We need to make sure that the prosecutor and the police understand that they work for the public that they are serving. And that's critically important. The most important process of the step is usually about how a case starts, whether it's identification, whether it's the focus in on someone. We need to make sure that we're fair, that we're impartial, but we also need to make sure that we give meaningful opportunities to course correct if somebody does end up in the system. And those really need to be blind of racial factors and also understanding of the implicit bias as well. And so that kind of training and that kind of meaningful and intentional dialogue
10 seconds.
training is absolutely critical. Thank you for your question. But I think that's the pain out in the community, and we need to understand that pain and that frustration, because that erodes trust in our community as well.
And time. Candidate Manion.
Sure. One of the first things we have to do is just ensure that our young people don't come in contact with the criminal justice system. That is why diversion is so important. And absolutely, we have to recognize that there is explicit and implicit bias in every step of our criminal justice process. I have actually done work to train our prosecutors to improve fair and impartial decision-making, and we still have work to do. We can engage in blind charging decisions, and we have to work with our community to do that. We can also use race equity tools in our decision-making, and we can work with community to do that. We also have to examine our state sentencing laws to ensure that there isn't inherent racism built into that or inherent disparities built into our structure around our state sentencing laws.
10 seconds.
I am also really proud of the fact that under my leadership, leaders in our office worked with Seattle University to build a model identification protocol that is now used across the nation to reduce disparity.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B. This is our community election connection. This particular debate is for King County Prosecuting Attorney. The candidates are Leesa Manion and Jim Ferrell. We're now going to go to our moderators. Thank you for being here. Pastor Jeffrey and Cindy Laws. Cindy, we're going to start with you. The time again will be reduced to 1 minute. I will ask our moderators again to try and be brief with your questions. You can certainly add context, but we just want to make sure that we hear from our candidates here. And Cindy, your first question will be directed to candidate Ferrell.
Thank you. A couple of months ago, 11 South King County mayors put together a letter that cited several problems that they've faced, particularly starting with the Supreme Court's Blake decision, which is about cities and counties' challenges with trying to charge a crime for drug possession. They cited state laws that were passed and so on and so forth. But the bottom line was that they're asking, begging the King County prosecutor for help. What is your thoughts about this recent letter? And what could the King County prosecutor do to be more helpful in fighting crime, particularly in these areas in South King County?
Candidate Ferrell, 1 minute.
It's such an excellent question, because that letter was really sort of just an act of desperation. We have been trying for years to dialogue with the King County Prosecutor's Office, going back to 2019. Remember, I was a senior deputy in the office. I brought together all of the mayors in South King County and their police chiefs and brought in the King County Prosecutor's Office and their senior team 3 years ago, before the pandemic started, to express these same concerns. And I think that really, it's one thing after another in which the concerns that we have addressed repeatedly have not been addressed. And that really culminated in RCP being launched with zero notice to the cities. And really, I think, ultimately a concern that our concerns were not being addressed. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I feel like I need to, because I have to. I love being the mayor of the city of Federal Way, but it's difficult to do the
10
job
seconds.
when there's such violent crime and crime is increasing at a certain rate. And I see an office that I think was once really a model that is
And time. Candidate Manion, same question. You'll have 1 minute.
Okay. It's unfortunate that my opponent is not sharing all of the facts. So we learned about that letter on Facebook, and we responded, and our response is on our website. Every time the mayors or local governments want to meet with us, we meet. And we met with the mayors, we met with their police chiefs, and we showed up with data, and we talked about the number of referrals that came to our office from their police chiefs and their police departments. And we absolutely are willing to partner, and we absolutely will work with police. One of the things that I want to do when I'm elected is I will call a public safety forum, and I will invite the participation of all of our police departments and all of our local governments, because when we focus our resources on the same priorities, we will have the collective impact that we're looking for, that improves public safety, but also builds partnership.
10 seconds. Good?
Okay.
Pastor Jeffrey, next question. Your question will initially be directed towards candidate Manion.
I want to first start off by asking Mr. Ferrell a question, and then can I go to
I got to keep it the way we're doing it, so you can.
Well, all right, okay. So what about mental health services, and what stance should those who are incarcerated receive mental health services even while they await trial? And when Mr. Ferrell answers this question, I would like him to answer how many minorities are in his staff, because he never answered that.
Your question initially goes to candidate Manion.
I'm a big proponent of providing mental health services to individuals because it addresses root causes. And when we provide mental health services, it changes behavior. I'm a strong proponent of Veterans Court, Mental Health Court, and Drug Court. I also want to change our state's Involuntary Treatment Act laws so that it can become a more therapeutic, collaborative model that offers people help and services before they decompensate, before they commit crimes. If it's a collaborative model, we also get to use our mental illness drug dependency tax dollars to pay for it, because we don't get enough funding from the state. And it's not safe for our community when we simply let people languish without the treatment they need. So I'm a big proponent of mental health services.
You have 15 seconds left. Do you want to give it up?
No, I think I'm good.
Candidate Ferrell,
Could I hear the question again?
can you repeat the question,
The
please?
question is about mental health services. What's your stance? Should those who are incarcerated receive mental health services while awaiting trial? And I want an answer to the question, how many minorities are on your staff? Which I think was asked, but I didn't hear a response.
1 minute.
All right. With regard to mental health services, people who encounter the criminal justice system are by definition in crisis. They've committed a crime, and many of them have mental health issues, drug addiction issues, drug or alcohol addiction issues, and they're co-occurring. And people often engage in self-medication to try to deal with those. So the idea really is to make sure that if you resolve pre-trial and post-trial, that you have conditions of sentence that help people, unwind those issues. And I think that's critical. That if it's a mental health issue, they get the treatment, and you're monitoring that to make sure that happens. But also the drug and alcohol treatment, and then because the two of them combined, is a downward spiral. I think the question was about my campaign.
10 seconds.
Not about my city staff. So regarding my campaign team, I don't have exact numbers, but I think the question was about people that are around me in my campaign team. And off the top of my head, I don't have a number.
And time.
1, 2, 3.
So I'm gonna, the question ends where it ends. The people can make the decision on whether it was answered effectively or not. You're each gonna have one question left before we go to final statements. And so make it your best one, make it a good one. Cindy, we'll start with you, and your question will initially be directed towards candidate Ferrell.
Great, thank you. So the one of the things that keeps coming up in Seattle is that so many of the crimes are committed by a small number of people who repeat offending hundreds of times. Are you willing to work cooperatively with the U.S. Attorney's Office to refer armed repeat offenders to their office for federal prosecution, thereby ensuring a mandatory 5-year sentence under federal law?
1 minute, candidate Ferrell.
Well, I think we need to look at strategies. The answer to that, yes, if appropriate and when appropriate. The idea is to make sure that when we come into contact with individuals who are committing offenses that we know have committed repeat offenses, they need to be charged. And that's why bail is important, right? Because there are situations in which people commit over and over and over the same crimes, and it's just not appropriate. And I think that people in our community are very frustrated by this. But it is about holding people accountable, making sure you get justice, and trying to really get your arms around what's going on. But I can tell you, people right now are pushing to the point, or there are certain very small number of people that are pushing to the point of resistance. And the absence of resistance, the crime is escalating, and we need to make sure that we're addressing that. So we have to look at all kinds of strategies. On the other side, you've got the U.S. Attorney, the City Attorney's Office, which is pursuing
10 seconds.
High impact offenders in the downtown core, and we need to work on both sides with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the City Attorney's Office in collaboration to hold individuals accountable.
And time. Candidate Manion, would you like the question repeated?
No, I have it. Many years ago, back when Reagan done, before he became a council member and he was a federal prosecutor, he and I built Project Safe Neighborhoods together. And that's where the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office works directly with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And one of our prosecutors is cross-designated as a federal prosecutor and has the decision to either go federal or to go state, in order to improve accountability and to have greater accountability, particularly as it relates to ammunition. So we still have that close partnership. The new U.S. Attorney, Nick Brown, is a friend of mine. I've known him for a very long time. We've collaborated on a number of projects. Similarly, I've also reached a partnership with our new City Attorney, Ann Davison. Our offices trade notes daily on their high utilizer list, on our high pro list. And together, we have reduced organized retail theft and property crime by 20% since January. The Downtown Seattle Association recently shared that number with their paid business members. So that's not a sign that we give up. It's a sign that we keep going.
Pastor Jeffrey, you have the opportunity for the last question of the debate. All right, it's about that time.
It's a wild card question. So my question is,
and it will initially be directed to candidate.
To what extent is the prosecutor's office, should the prosecutor's office be involved with police shootings of unarmed minority people, because it seems that it's just too often, too frequent, and really nothing is really done about it.
Sure. I supported the reforms that were brought about by I-940, and I secured resources and formed a new public integrity unit within the prosecuting attorney's office. And that unit is dedicated to reviewing police use of force cases and officer-involved shooting cases. And our office is also the first office in our state to charge a police officer with murder. So it is because of that work that I intentionally declined to seek the endorsement of any police unions, because the review of those cases would not appear or feel fair and unbiased if I'm endorsed by police guilds. So I also support independent investigation. I know the governor's office just formed an office of independent investigation. They're still building their team, but it's absolutely essential that those cases are investigated and investigated independently.
You have 14 seconds left.
I'm good. Thank you.
Candidate Ferrell.
All right, thank you. I think the reforms of Initiative 940 are working. As the mayor of a city that has a police force of 150 officers, when we do have a shooting, I think it's critically important that and we do follow to the letter of the law, making sure another agency comes in. We have no role whatsoever in those investigations, and I think that's absolutely critical. The inquest system has been modified. We had some concerns initially, me being some of the South King County mayors, and I think that those modifications are working to make sure that we get to the role, and the King County Prosecutor's Office is involved in that inquest system. But I can tell you, as the mayor, I think it's critically important that when I oversee, a police force, that we understand that no one of us is above the law. We have to follow the evidence, and that's the way I'll be as a prosecutor. I'm proud of the endorsements of the police guilds that I've received. But no
10
one is above
seconds.
the law, and everybody, if they've committed a crime, they need to be held accountable to it. And that's where I think the body-worn cameras and the systems that we've got in place, I think ultimately
And time.
going to be helpful.
Okay, so this is what in radio I call killing time. I'm going to give y'all a second to think about your closing statement while I make a couple statements here. Giving you. So anyway, first of all, for our studio audience and for those of you at home, you can clap as well. How about a round of applause for our moderators? Wow. Pastor Jeffrey and Cindy Laws, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your questions on behalf of our community. We appreciate what both of you do in our communities. Thank you for the questions from our audience in the studio as well. And thank you all for being here. This is Rainier Avenue Radio's Community Election Connection. We'll definitely be hosting one again on the 27th for the 37th Legislative District. We're trying to schedule a couple more because everybody who's running, you should be informed about what their platform is, what they're running on, whether it's judicial, district, whatever. And so we're going to try and get a couple more in here. And thanks to KL for doing a great job of scheduling all these for us. Everyone who's been involved in helping us put these together. And so now I gave you enough time. You're going to both have 2 minutes here. If there's something that's missed, if there's something you want to explain, if there's something that you want to share that hasn't been shared yet. Audience, this is your last opportunity in this debate to hear from these candidates. Maybe you felt you've had clarity. Maybe you felt you've had answers. They're going to try and put it together for you in these last 2 minutes. I've told them you've got 2 minutes. So if there's something that you are waiting to hear to make a decision, hopefully within these last 2 minutes, you'll hear it, or maybe you've heard it in the previous, but you got 2 minutes. Candidate Ferrell, you elected to go first. So you'll be first. And you ready?
I'm ready.
You have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you to our moderators, to our audience, both in present and on the radio. I think this is a really pivotal election. I think this will really determine the course of how we're going to see public safety play out in our region. Everybody in this community deserves to be safe and to feel safe. Unfortunately, I think there are a great number of people out in our community, out of the 2 million people that live here, a great number of people that they don't feel safe, and that there is an escalation of crime, both violent crime and property crime. Statewide, car theft has gone up 88% just in the past year. In just 2 months ago, in August of last year, or of August of this year, we had a record number of call-outs for the homicide unit in the prosecutor's office that went out to scenes. Crime is escalating, and we need to make sure that we're addressing it. And I can tell you that I am very concerned about the lack of a serious plan to address the backlog, the over 4,500 cases at this point, no discernible plan, no sense of urgency, and that is causing the system to buckle. But I also think if you think about those cases, difficult decisions will need to be made about those, but they've got to be addressed with a sense of urgency. I'm tremendously proud of the endorsements that I've received just this past week from the Seattle Times. Adam Smith, our congressman, Representative Amy Wallen, dozens of elected officials, 15 mayors, and just quite a number of people, hundreds of donors, labor. But I can tell you that ultimately what I've heard in the community is that they need a course correction. Really, ultimately, what I think this race comes down to is ask yourself this. If you think that we're doing okay in public safety in King County, then my opponent is your choice. If you think that we need a reset and a new direction and a sense of urgency in addressing crime, I am that person. I've got 19 years as a prosecutor, 16 in King County, and I've been leading a large city for the past 9 years, and I'm ready to lead. Thank you.
All right. And candidate Manion, are you ready?
I am ready.
You have 2 minutes. You're on the clock.
All right, great. Thank you, Tony B. Thank you to Rainier Avenue Radio, and thank you to our moderators for your great questions. And thank you to our audience members and listeners for tuning in. Making our community safer, protecting victims, and reducing racial disparities requires proven experience and hands-on leadership. Our challenges are complex, but we can and we will do better. We must continue to move our communities forward. We simply cannot afford to turn back the clock on important reforms that have served to reduce youth violence and incarceration, that have increased accountability for police misconduct, that have allowed nonviolent drug users to access services and reclaim their lives, that have increased protections for victims by removing firearms from domestic violence and other dangerous situations. And as your next prosecuting attorney, I will continue to lead on these critical issues to ensure that all of our communities are safe and supported. And as your next prosecuting attorney, I will continue to build strong partnerships to protect public safety, and I will continue to track outcomes for juvenile diversion because we know diversion is an effective way of reducing crime and recidivism, and it offers opportunity and hope to our young people. And I will continue to work to dismantle the racial disparities in our criminal legal system. I am proud to have the endorsements of 215 individuals and organizations. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the 37th Legislative District Dems, Mayor Bruce Harrell, Councilmember Zahalai, every single Democratic organization that is endorsing in this race. I am the right person to be the next King County Prosecuting Attorney, and I ask for your help and your vote. Thank you.
You still have 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, there it is.
Oh, you know what? Can I go back and use 10 seconds?
You got 7 seconds now.
All right, 7 seconds. I asked my opponent a question and I feel like I should answer it. So my personal leadership team is 28. My directors, deputy directors, and the people who work for them, 23 are BIPOC, women, or LGBTQIA.
All right. Well, let's do that applause thing again. That was cool. First of all, I would like to thank our candidates for running for office, both of you. It's not an easy task, and it takes a lot, and you sacrifice a lot to do that. So thank you both for running for office. You've had the opportunity now to appeal to our live studio audience, as well as an audience that is streaming. And again, in about 30 minutes, you'll be able to watch this all over again. You'll be able to share this with your friends. Folks can go back to it, so spread the word. This is a critical election and a critical candidacy that we have here for King County Prosecuting Attorney. The reason why we do this is so that you can be more informed with your vote. Your vote matters. That's what this comes down to. Your vote matters. So you've had an opportunity to hear from our candidates. Hopefully you heard something that will sway you in one direction or another. And if not, do what you can to research for yourself as well. You don't have to rely just solely on this debate. Maybe this will spur you to find out more and ask questions of your own. That's what we want to do. We'll let you know more about the debates that we have coming up. Again, thanks to our staff at Rainier Avenue Radio.world, Roger and James and Daniel, KL and Tyrone for pulling this together. A couple of more shameless promotions. Again, we're going to be partnering with Earshot Jazz for the Earshot Jazz Festival. So we'll be broadcasting live from some of the venues at Town Hall. Alex Dugdale is this year's presenting artist and we'll be talking to him and also just talking to most of the artists and doing interviews. So all the way through October and November, look for our partnership with Earshot Jazz, where you'll be hearing interviews with some of the jazz artists that are participating. On Thursday, the Ohio Players. Y'all act like you don't know who I'm talking about. So, because I said Ohio Players, will be here at the Columbia City Theater. They're happy to come to South Seattle. We're going to interview on this stage. You're excited to be part of the history of the Columbia City Theater. That will be from 4 to 5 on Thursday. Ohio Players right here in the Columbia City Theater. They're going to be playing starting on Thursday all the way through Friday or through Sunday at Demetrius Jazz Alley, I think 7:30 on Thursday, then 7:30 and 9:30 on Friday, 7:30 and 9:30 on Saturday, then final show 7:30 on Sunday. And then on Saturday, Rainier Beach and Garfield live from Memorial Stadium. 2 o'clock, we will be broadcasting that game live as well. I have not mentioned all of the wonderful programming that we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can go to our website and check that out and tune us in. It's me, Tony B. I've been your host. That's it. That's all the time that I have. That's going to do it for the kid. In closing, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're probably right. I'm out. Peace.